Children have been the object of horror stories for hundreds of years. In the past 20 years, there have been reports from all over the world of new objects of terror in the form of black-eyed children. Some label these beings as an urban legend or pure fiction. Many others claim that black-eyed kids are real. Now, real or imagined, black-eyed kids are creepy, little jerks at best. At worst, they are deadly. In fact, they could be pure evil. People who report encounters with them often feel that the children were somehow supernatural or extremely dangerous, though most could not often explain why. They begin with seemingly innocent questions, such as a request for a ride home or to be allowed inside the house to use a bathroom or make a phone. Persistent reports come in from people who've encountered black-eyed kids. They say they are otherwise normal-looking children ranging in ages from 5 or 6 to their mid-teens. But their eyes are reportedly pitch black. No pupils, no corneas, no white showing at all. Pitch black. They often wear clothing such as hoodies. Some have been described as wearing white bedclothes or sometimes normal attire. They are said to have pale skin, appearing to be the pallor of death. Well, that's definitely not good. At first glance, these children appear normal. However, when they speak, witnesses report a bizarre, mechanical nature to their speech. There is something almost hypnotic and rhythmic in the way they pronounce words. This eeriness seems to immediately trigger an instinctual sense of dread in all who encounter these beings. Animals are also said to panic in their presence. Often they run away or tense up as if to defend themselves. Yet this is not the most horrifying part, since their most chilling feature does not become immediately apparent at first. Because the children tend to look down when you first meet them, or it is too dark to see them fully, it is not until later into the encounter that the pitch black depths of their eyes are revealed. The witnesses claim these creatures have no whites of the eyes at all, only blackness. Those who have lived to tell of black-eyed kids stress of how sheer terror grips every fiber of their being. In addition to their eerie speech, their eyes seem to have a hypnotic quality. They are said to be able to influence those that look upon them. Often people begin to agree with their request against their better judgment. Often, even though the request will seem vaguely unsettling without realizing why it is, once you discover that their eyes are completely black, some people who encounter these beings feel that the kids may have been using some form of low-level mind control to get them to comply. A person might find their hand unconsciously reaching for the car door in order to allow a black-eyed child inside without consciously making the decisions. At that point, a person realizes they are in the presence of a paranormal force. They may deny these beings entry. If that happens, the black-eyed kids will begin to be very forceful. Witnesses report them demanding entry. Apparently they have rules from their unknown leaders. They say they can only come in if they receive verbal permission. Should at this point the person shut the door to them or drive away, the black-eyed child will vanish without a trace. Who these children are or what they truly want is never revealed in the course of their conversations. And most reports of these beings come from those who have denied them entry, so they never find out what they want and are not harmed other than the trauma of the feelings of dread. But there are some who describe letting those creepy kids into their home. A woman in rural Vermont allowed 2 black-eyed children into her home. Her story, quote, "I made the mistake of letting the black-eyed kids inside, and now I'm worried that I might die because of it. I hope this will be a warning to everyone who is ever in the position to make the same mistake that I did. A little over a year ago, I woke up because I heard a loud noise banging on my front door. At the time, my husband and I lived in a small town on a dirt road just off the rural route into a town. It was the middle of a snowstorm, and when I looked out the window, I could see that our motion spotlight was on. I could see that there were footprints in the snow that had come from our road and into our driveway, but there was no car anywhere. Our front door was obscured from the window, but I could see that someone was standing there. Banging on the door started, and my husband went to answer it while I stood in the hallway. When he opened the door, there were 2 children standing in the snow looking toward the ground. They were a boy and a girl and could not have been more than 8 years old. They were dressed strangely and had odd haircuts. The children were very unnerving. They would not make eye contact, and when my husband asked them if everything was okay, they asked if they could come in. My husband looked at me like, "What do I do?" And I asked the kids where their parents were. And they said they will be here soon. And it was around 2 o'clock in the morning at this point, so the only reasonable thought in my head was that there must have been an accident or these kids got lost. As much as my instincts told me not to bring them inside, I did anyway. I went into the kitchen to make some hot cocoa while my husband took them into the living room. While I was fixing the kettle, I could hear my husband talking to them. They spoke in a sing-songy voice and said our parents will be here soon. They weren't afraid to be in a stranger's home at all. I started to notice that our cats, we had 4, were all hiding except Pigeon, who was in the kitchen with me. Normally our cats are very curious and friendly. This time none of them even tried to see who was here, which I thought was very strange. When I walked back into the living room, the kids were sitting on the couch as still as could be, but my husband was holding his head in his hands. I asked him what was wrong, and he just said that he felt very dizzy all of a sudden, but that he was fine. I turned back to the children to give them their cocoa, but when they looked at me, I gasped. It took everything inside of me not to drop the mugs and run away. When they looked at me, their eyes were completely black. They had no whites, just giant black pupils. They went into the bathroom together, and I hurried back to my husband to ask him if he had seen their eyes. He had seen them too. We were in the middle of talking about whose children they could be when my husband's nose started to bleed. He never had nosebleeds as long as I had known him. That's when the power went out. I heard my husband yell my name from the living room, and as I started to walk back through the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. The 2 children were standing at the end of the hallway. They weren't moving, and I've never been so scared in my whole life. They just stood there in the dark. After what felt like forever, the voice said, "Our parents are here." And they walked to the front door and opened it. And walked out, leaving it wide open. My husband jumped up to go close it and almost fell over. We looked out the window and saw 2 men standing by a black car idling at the end of our driveway. The men looked like they were wearing black-colored suits and were very tall, at least 6 feet. When my husband waved at them, they just stared at us, got into the car, and drove off. Our power came on about a half an hour later, but nothing was the same after that. Over the next few months, 3 of our cats went missing. We can only assume that they ran away somewhere and never came back, but the worst thing was coming home to find Pigeon in a puddle of blood on the living room floor. He looked like he had been vomiting blood. After my husband's nosebleeds, which became a regular occurrence, we went to see the doctor. He didn't know what to make of it other than dry nasal passages. But my husband was diagnosed with aggressive skin cancer. When the doctor asked if he used tanning beds, we both thought he was joking. But apparently this kind of melanoma is linked to overuse of indoor tanning. The doctors think he will recover, but don't understand how he got it so quickly. Since we let the black-eyed kids inside our home, I've also suffered from regular dizzy spells and nosebleeds on a regular basis. I've had other issues which I won't mention here, but trust me when I say that I am suddenly in the worst condition of my life and no one can do anything about it. I know that all of this is because I let the black-eyed children into my home. Whatever these things are, they come in the guise of children who are in need of help. Who couldn't try to help a child? This monster comes in a guise that appears innocent, but in fact is anything but. If black-eyed kids show up at your door,